Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
USAA.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy. That's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Welcome back to the Skating Penguin Network, everyone. You may be a little surprised to see this hitting your podcast feeds on a Thursday, especially if you listen to our last recap episode. We said we'd be back this weekend after the Penguins played a back-to-back set, but it is the evening of January 15th, and we weren't planning on recording today, but around 1 o'clock Eastern time this afternoon, news dropped, news that we were kind of waiting for and maybe expecting at some point, but the Pittsburgh Penguins have decided to place goaltender Tristan Jarry on waivers as of 2 o'clock Eastern time today on the 15th. He will have until he will remain on waivers until I believe noon on Thursday, meaning any team can place a waiver on him and take him for no cost. The thought is that will not happen, and we'll get into a little bit where he will go, what the situation is here in a little bit. But as always, I am joined by Snail out in Seattle here. And Snail, all I texted you when I saw the tweet was they waived him, LOL. And it didn't take you long to figure out who I was talking about. But the Penguins have waived Tristan Jarry, something we have discussed in the past pretty much all season at some point. But Tristan Jarry is no longer the starting goaltender or even an NHL goaltender for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
No, and he's got, not the biggest goalie contract out there, but probably one that most teams would be uncomfortable with given his statistics. And I was just going to rattle off here really quickly. And I texted these to you last night. This is from Jfresh on Twitter. So Jarry has played 22 games this season. If you remember, he had quite a long stint down in the AHL to find his game. He allowed a goal on the first shot he faced 6 times. I think we thought it was a lot more than that, but 6 is still an indicting number. Like, that is not great. So first shot he faced 6 times. On the second shot he faced of the game, 4 times. On the third shot twice, on the fourth shot 4 times, and on the fifth shot 3 times. He made it to shot number 6 without allowing a goal only 6 times in 22 NHL games.
Yeah, that's well below 50% of the time. And it feels like, honestly, he started more than 22 games. Like, that's how much of a drag this has been with him in goal this year. Like, when they said 22 starts,
that seemed light.
22, that seemed like, that's less than half their games. Even with that, factoring in that conditioning stint in the AHL, it still felt like well below. He felt like he started way more games than that. But no,
that's just the pain we went through because those games were extra long.
Yeah, he literally gave up a goal on the first shot of the season. We should have known all the way back in October against the Rangers, giving up that first goal and that first shot. We should have known. But,
agreed.
This is a path we mentioned. It was probably the only really path the Penguins could take as to moving on from Jarry in season outside of a multiplayer trade. You weren't probably just going to make a one-for-one swap for a goaltender who is expensive and not very good. He still has 3 seasons left on that contract.
That's scary.
That is, what happens this summer is going to be very interesting because that is not an easy contract to move. His buyout for, I believe, the next 2 seasons it maybe saves the Penguins like $1 million. It maybe even less than that. and I don't know if a buyout's feasible. So there may be a big deal where he is thrown in as a piece and done away with. But outside of, I think, a cataclysmic injury to the goaltending situation, Tristan Jarry's time is done in Pittsburgh. In his place will be Joel Blomqvist, who started the season in Pittsburgh and is now returning to Pittsburgh. And honestly, I think if Nedeljkovic would either get hurt or they would move him at the deadline, I think it would be Philip Larson being the next man up uh,
You're
from Wilkes-Barre. And I actually thought they were going to give Larson the call first over Blomqvist. I thought they were going to make that move, but they are going with Blomqvist. So I think he is going to be the number one goaltender. That, or we'll see like a 60-40 split between him and Nedeljkovic. There is a back-to-back set this weekend, so I'd expect each of them to get a game there, so we won't be able to tell much until they head out west. But, I mean, again, I don't have anything I have no problem with Tristan Jarry, the person. For all we know, he's a good person. But all signs pointed to when he inked that deal back in July of 2023, when Kyle Dubas was just hopping on board. It felt like a panic signing. It turns out it probably was a panic signing. I don't think Jarry in that position was going to get a short-term deal. I think he was looking for a long-term deal. And this is kind of Kyle Dubas admitting his first mistake here. He's kind of they've done what they could with Ryan Graves, given the situation. He's mostly healthy scratched in the press box night in and night out. But when Dubas took over, he was kind of going solo on all this. He didn't have his team built out. Jason Spezza was basically the only voice in the room. The analytics department wasn't built out. But this is him kind of punting on this first big mistake that he made. And I think he's definitely improved since then. And I think this is it takes a lot for like a lot of these guys in these positions. They might be good with the media, but they all have big egos. And I think that's a part of doing the job, is having an ego. And it can take a lot for these guys to admit their mistakes and make the necessary moves. Jim Rutherford was kind of crafty at it and wasn't shy about it. But for a lot of these guys, like a Lou Lamoriello, I think is a good example of an ego that can't admit a mistake. So it's good to see Dubas.
I think we had one that didn't like to admit mistakes either, just before Dubas was in. Hextall. Hextall was not one that would come out to the media and say, we're essentially punting on a decision that I made. I don't think he ever once came. Did he ever face the media after, keeping Jeff Carter over Tanev and McCann? That's one that I would have liked to have hear a reasoning from his mouth as to why he thought that was the move.
That was just very bad asset management. Yeah. We can go back. That's kind of the beginning of this decline for the Penguins. If we go back and look at that expansion draft with Seattle moving on from McCann, they did trade him, but for basically nothing in return. Now that
and look who's in the Kraken's lineup still, and who isn't in the lineup for the Penguins to this day.
Yeah, Kasperi Kapanen is gone. But Jared McCann, he had 40 goals. He's basically the leader of that Kraken team.
He's their best scorer, first line winger, can play center.
He could easily still be signed in Pittsburgh long term, producing very well. But Dubas comes in, and I think that it was reported that right before the news came out that he was being waived, Josh Yohe had a tweet that basically said the Penguins have reached the breaking point with Tristan Jarry. And it was kind of a tweet out of the blue, because even after last night's disappointment, okay, it's just another Jarry game. We're just going to have to deal with it until something gives. And that came out of nowhere. The Penguins didn't practice till this afternoon, so it's kind of hard to say where that tweet came from, but that popped out there. And then within minutes after that, I even said, when Josh Yohe tweeted that out, I even said, well, that's great. They feel like that, but it doesn't mean anything until they do something about it.
Right.
And right after I tweeted that, it was like, oh, Tristan Jarry will be placed on waivers at 2:00. And that's kind of what got the ball started rolling. And Dubas, he went to the media then. The Penguins held practice shortly after that. But Dubas pretty much said he's not hanging around. He's going to the AHL. And that's kind of that. I mean, I guess there is a path back for him if there would be holes to fill, but it kind of sounds like, barring a catastrophe, we've seen the last of Tristan Jarry in a Pittsburgh Penguins uniform.
That's what I wanted to get to quickly, Robbie, was this doesn't feel like a waiver wire transaction. He's hit the waiver wire once. He did the conditioning stint down to Wilkes-Barre. That wasn't waiver wire. This feels like a funeral. This feels like with the media, with the interviews to Rust and Crosby, the leaders of the team, Sullivan, Dubas coming and giving a lengthy interview. This feels more like a goodbye than a we'll see you again soon type of deal. And in the interview with Dan Kingerski, Dubas alludes to that and says, basically that, like you had said, Robbie, that he needs to earn his way back up and he needs to earn his roster spot again. But something that was so refreshing to hear that maybe has been alluded to but never vocalized and kind of been made very clear was that Dubas said at this point that, you've got Murashov dominating in the East Coast Hockey League where he's outplayed, like he's played himself out of that league. You've got Philip Larson, who, like you said, I thought he was going to be the one to get the call up because of how hot he's been down and he was a draft pick of Detroit's. He played over in Europe for 4 years, I believe. Like, I would think that maybe he's ready to crack the NHL as well. But they're giving it to you all Blomqvist. But you got 3 good goaltenders right now, probably playing above and beyond, or they've outplayed themselves from the leagues that they're in. Jarry's not going to get a start before any of them, and Dubas is kind of staying on that path, and he's alluding to, these prospects are important to us, and their development is more important than Jarry getting his ice time and his starts at the NHL level. And I appreciate that. Finally he's kind of being blunt about it. He's like, look, Jarry's going down indefinitely, and he's got to earn his way back up. And probably the unspoken part was you might see him sooner than expected, barring some catastrophe with injuries. But you're going to be seeing Yoel Blomqvist. You're going to probably see Philip Larson. Hell, you might see Murashov before you see Jarry.
Yeah.
In the crease for the Pittsburgh Penguins this year, and it's tough because you feel for the guy because he's a proud athlete. Like you said, I don't have an issue with Jarry the person, but night after night, he's proven that I don't think he belongs in this league right now. He cannot. It's a show me league, and he's showing me night after night that his game just isn't where it needs to be an every night or a starting goaltender in the NHL, Robbie. Like, he's just not. So with that said, I don't see him getting picked up by a team. I think he's going to be in the minors for a long time.
For the rest of the year, I'd say, and then they're going to have to obviously try to do something in the offseason with that contract and the player. And so good luck sorting all that out.
Buyout's ugly. And,
Yeah, buyout's ugly for 2 years. And I think that obviously you want to avoid that at all costs. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a lot of bad GMs in the NHL. I mean,
true.
Just start picking up the phone and calling people.
Well, I was looking in the comments sections, and I was shocked to see so many people putting their hands up for their whatever team they root for to pick up Jarry. I saw people putting their hand up saying Stevie Y needs to pick this guy up because he's better than Husso, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
The problem is, like, you not only have to pick the goalie up, you have to make sure you have the room to fit that contract. Like, it's not like when they put Jesse Puljujarvi on waivers and
right.
It's $800,000 for a year. You have to find a way to make it work, because then all of a sudden you're saddled with the deal, like the 3 years. Like, that is your responsibility. Then if it doesn't work out, you have to figure out what to do.
No, he's getting paid getting paid like top 6 winger money.
Yeah, you'd have to figure out what to do, where to fit that money. Now, there's some teams that have plenty of cap space, it would be no problem. But also, there's only so many goaltender roster spots in the NHL as well. That's another thing with a goalie. There's only so many
Right.
goalie roster spots in the NHL. So it'll be very interesting what they do this offseason when the real questions will have to be answered. But barring a catastrophe, yeah, Philip Larson is probably the next man up. He's probably your third goalie at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Murashov, I do wonder if they would rush that quickly, but you have Taylor Gauthier is in the system as well.
Yep.
So a bunch of names out there that, again, and like Jarry was your number one goaltender. That's not just a guy you flip back and forth. Like, this is a kind of an eviction notice to a point. Like, this is the end. This is
No. This feels
on.
like they're punting on Jarry. I don't see as fans, it's easy for us to kind of be like, oh, he's done. But I would say with the way that the media is treating this in the interviews, like I'd mentioned, this doesn't feel like someone's just hitting the waiver wire and they got to get their head right down in the minors if they don't get picked up. This is a parting of cutting of ties. As Dubas alluded to, saying he's probably going to have another conversation with Jarry tomorrow once he gets to Wilkes-Barre. So you know that conversation is got to be tough for a guy like Jarry, but no, this feels like a divorce, sort of. You know what I mean? Separation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's going to be very interesting to see. I'd love to hear the contents of that phone call, because
me too.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm assuming that at some point, if this is what it looks like, Jarry's going to request the trade. I think that's the only logical. Obviously, he's going to want to go somewhere and try to play and try to get his career back on track. But 34 shots he faced on Sunday and Tuesday combined, gave up 9 goals. Gave up 7 goals, I think, or 6 goals or something like that.
It's those stats that don't make me feel very bad at all, Robbie. I'm sorry.
I mean, like,
it's the stats like that as a fan every night, I'm just like, well, good riddance. I'm sorry. Like, it sounds harsh, but good riddance, because I can't
blame you. Like, that is, I mean, your job as a goaltender in the NHL is to stop the puck, and the best do it at well over a 90% pace. And Jarry was
it's like an ERA in baseball, and I hate baseball, and I hate using baseball analogies, but that's the stripes of the tiger. You know what I mean? That's how you judge a professional, and his is not good enough to be in the NHL. Point blank. It's just not. And I don't think that's a hot take. There are Jarry stands on the internet. I see him after every start. They are doing gymnastics and backflips to find ways to try and convince you that this was in no way Jarry's fault. And I'm so over reading those. If I'm the general manager, if I'm the coach, I'm punting on Jarry. No way I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it just,
and quickly there, you said another spicy meatball a little bit ago that I don't think you gave enough time to, and that is Blomqvist is a rookie. He's coming up. He spent a little bit of time up here with the big club, but he's the starting goaltender now. Nedeljkovic has not played good enough to be the starting goaltender at this point. That is very close to being punted on probably as well. I think that if I'm Ned, that's a wake-up call. I think he's done an incredible job battling and at times punching above his weight, but he is by no means going to be looked at as the veteran starting goaltender. He is wearing the baseball cap, and Yoel Blomqvist is getting the leash.
Absolutely. I mean, Nedeljkovic, God bless him for what he did last year, almost single-handedly helping carry the Penguins to a playoff berth. But the matter of fact is, he hasn't been good this year. He has struggled. He's had some moments, but it just doesn't feel like he can put anything together with any consistency. They asked him about it, and he pretty much said that this is very similar to the situation that he went through in Detroit. It's frustrating and it's hard to accept in the moment, but the only thing you can do is control what you control. But yeah, I think there's definitely some warning bulbs flashing for him as well. again, he would be easier to move in a pinch if it
That's
came to
what's
that.
not being said is that a team might put their hand. They might be like, "Are you looking to unload a goalie contract? Because I'll put my hand up for Ned way
Oh
quicker than
yeah,
Jarry."
oh yeah. Somebody would easily take that. Only a year left after this year. Not very expensive. A very pure backup contract. Could absolutely see somebody taking a waiver on him, especially if they would suffer an injury between now and um, the trade deadline. You don't know what some of these teams that are in the playoffs or fighting for a spot are going to be dealing with here in a couple weeks. But no, I mean, Joel Blomqvist, in my opinion, is the starting goaltender for the Pittsburgh Penguins now. It was really only a matter of time. I didn't necessarily
Right.
expect it to come this quickly and this suddenly, but the future is now, as they say, and it starts. I'm going to go on a limb and say that Blomqvist starts in Buffalo on Friday night as kind of a statement. Get out there, kid. He's been playing plenty of games. He shouldn't be rusty. Obviously, the NHL is a different beast than the AHL, but yeah, it's his time now. His net, as far as I'm concerned, his feet are already wet. It's time to jump into the deep end now. We've been waiting for this for a couple years now, since he kind of blossomed into this high end prospect goaltender, and now's the time. So I'm going to be very excited to see him be in a situation where this is his team now. That's his net, and let's see what the kid's got, because it's a huge part of what the plan for a rebuild is for Kyle Dubas and company.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be realistic here, like my expectations is if he goes in on against Buffalo, or let's say they save him for the Washington game, whichever it is, and he's a complete gas can, I'm not even kidding. I'll feel better about it than if Jarry was a gas can. It's the kid's got to learn. There's going to be bumps along the road, but man, there were times when he was in where, you know, it's so funny because he lets in a goal and it's like not the same feeling as when Jarry would. There was moments where Jarry would, and you're like, "Oh man, like we suck tonight." And then there's nights where Joel Blomqvist would let in 2 goals or something in a period, but the faith was there that he wasn't going to just absolute. When Jarry starts letting in goals, it's like the ice gets tilted downhill, and it just feels like the other team is peppering and coming harder at the Penguins. And it was never an easy. It was always an uneasy feeling, but. Yeah, I think for expectations for Joel Blomqvist in his first starts here, getting back up to the NHL is like you got to have he has the leash. You got to have some patience with him. The future is now, as you said, but I mean, there's going to be some learning curves along the way, and I think we got to be ready for that as well. But man, the faith is there. This is a young, moldable mind and a highly touted prospect, and yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be super interesting, and I'm excited for it. I think it's a little bit long overdue, but
Yeah,
I feel like didn't they put Jarry down in the minors right before their big road trip at the beginning of the year?
I believe that's when. Yeah, because it was right before they went out to Western Canada.
It was
correct.
before they went out to Western Canada, and they pretty much said you can just stay here and get your mind right. And they carried, I don't remember who all they carried on that trip. I think it was Blomqvist and
I think it was
that.
Blomqvist and Nedeljkovic. Yeah, because
They were talking about 3 goaltenders, but then they told Jarry just park it. Kind of the same deal right before they head out on a really long road trip. I don't think they play back in Pittsburgh till February, right?
February 1st. Yeah, so they're done. I think it's almost it's over 2 whole weeks until they're back in Pittsburgh. Last night, Tuesday the 14th, was the last home game, and they're I believe 17 days. 14, 15. Yeah,
That is
18.
long.
Yeah, it's a long trip, and you're bouncing around. I mean, you're starting out east, and then you got to go to California for 2, and then you go up to Seattle, back to California, out to Utah, and then home. So it's gonna be a busy few weeks for the Penguins, and again, the way that the homestand ended, you weren't feeling great. Maybe you feel a little bit better now, even if it's just excitement to see how Blomqvist does and acquits himself as the top goalie. And like, this is your team now. Rally the boys and let's see what we can get out west and hope for the best.
Absolutely. And I think, I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but it's hard not to. But I wonder, Robbie, are we going to see the Penguins bring up anybody else from the AHL maybe to go on this road trip? Is there any chatter that you've seen of maybe a Tristan Brose or any sort of, I assume with Jarry going down to Wilkes-Barre, they got to do some balancing of the books to make all this work. But you got to think that sending him down, you're saving a little bit of scratch on his contract, opening up maybe
$1 million.
$1 million. I think you could fit I don't want to see Rutger up this year. I think you just burn a year on Rutger and let him marinate down in Wilkes-Barre. But Tristan Brose, I'm intrigued. Emil Benstrom even, just bring a little bit of youth and a little pop offensively on this road trip just to have. Yeah. I don't know. I don't mind it. I'm curious if they're working the waiver wire and they got a bus going back and forth from Wilkes-Barre to send people and bring people in. Might as well give someone a look on the road trip.
It definitely seems like they are going to be hauling Jesse Puljujarvi around with him, even though he's technically in the AHL. He was sent down, I believe, yesterday. So technically he is on paper in the AHL, but I don't believe he's actually in Wilkes-Barre. I think he is toting around with the big club. So that is one guy. But I have not seen news of anyone. Bemstrom, I think, would make the most sense because Brose, you just want to get reps still, unless you're ready to give him an actual run in the NHL. So Bemstrom would make sense as a body, especially if they would make a trade here early, a guy like Nieto or Achari. We talked about Achari being an attractive piece for a playoff bound team to open up a spot. So I haven't heard anything on names. Puljujarvi's still hanging around as a technical minor league player, but as of other names that we haven't heard yet, I have not heard anything. So Blomqvist is the only guy coming up from the minors.
Right. And I'm sure if, maybe, I don't know, that's big enough news in the locker room. I'm sure that, right now they're just dealing with Jarry before they head out on a lengthy road trip. So like I said, I think it's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but hey, if you're in the midst of shaking things up, the way I'm thinking about it, it's like, might as well make a big splash, wake the team up a bit. But I don't know. We'll see. I don't mind. I think that Puljujarvi, them bringing him on the road trip, I'd love to see him get a few more reps, but anyways, this pod isn't about Puljujarvi minutes.
Yeah. What was I going to say? No, I mean, yeah, it's done. What's done is done. It's what we've kind of been waiting for. And yeah, Tristan Jarry sent down waived. If he's not claimed by noon on Thursday, he will be in the AHL, and that's where he is headed, according to Kyle Dubas. Joel Blomqvist will be the call-up in his place and will be the other goaltender with Alex Nedeljkovic. But yeah, I mean, out of the blue, not something that I guess we're technically mad about in any way because
we're shocked by, really. I mean,
yeah, really. But yeah, this is where we're at now. It was one of the options. I didn't know if there was an option they were going to take at any point this season, but whatever the tipping point was has now been crossed, and Tristan Jarry is on the waiver wire.
Two-time All-Star Tristan Jarry.
That's wow. Yeah, it's really weird to read that. Yeah.
Two-time All-Star. I think he was tied for the league in shutouts. Like we're a year removed from that. But a lot of other indicting stats that you could dig up if you're really sniffing around on a guy like Tristan Jarry.
Yeah.
I just for conversation's sake, before we close this one out, like, do you see a team that would take a flyer on a guy like Tristan Jarry right now? Like, realistically, not like a hope. I mean, like, is there really a team that, like, I was thinking Chicago. Like, Chicago has Peter Mrazek, and then they've got Soderblom. young guy that I think that they have some sort of high hopes for. But do you see a team that would take him at his cap hit with the remaining years on the contract and says, I can fix him?
What about this? They trade Tristan Jarry to Anaheim
For
in
Gibby.
no, they're not going to do that with the young goaltenders.
Yeah.
I could see like a Chicago team that needs to reach the cap floor, that has plenty of space. Obviously, you're not going to get much in return for him. The more valuable part of the return is clearing the contract off the books.
Yep.
And kind of getting you don't know what the feelings are like in the locker room. You don't want that awkwardness just hanging around if you don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
But Chicago, obviously, a lot going on in Chicago right now, just in general. And maybe it's just everything in the pressure in Pittsburgh, it became untenable. And maybe it's just a get out of Pittsburgh, get a clear mind. I'm not saying he's going to turn into like Marty Brodeur, but just an average NHL goaltender somewhere.
If he just returned to 2021, Jarry, like that's a good goaltender. Like I said, I think last night when we were recording in the playoffs, when he had that broken foot, we were praying and begging for Jarry to take the net because we thought that that's what would give us the chance to win against Shesterkin in the Rangers. So, we're not that many years removed from that. Like, he was a good goaltender, but this, I don't know if it's psychological or what the narrative gets built up around a goaltender with his follies, and all of a sudden it becomes this mental thing. It has to be mental. Like it has to be.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder about that injury as well. Not that the injury is necessarily career-ending, but the injuries can have effect on your mental capacity as well. They're not easy to get over, and you don't know what that could do. Maybe he just needs a summer with a sports psychologist and a new setting to play hockey in that would help him immensely going forward once his time in Pittsburgh officially comes to a close.
I was thinking, God, Anaheim's got that young Dostal. That's the future goaltender for them, and they're stuck with John Gibson. So I don't know if any of the California teams. Yeah, San Jose has Askarov, who I believe is kind of up and down. I'm not totally sure on his standing, but they got rid of whatever one of the Woods, Blackwood or Wedgwood or whichever one it was.
I think they sent him to Colorado because Colorado is like a million of the Woods right now. Yeah,
I don't. San Jose might be an option. I don't know why. I'm trying to think of who else was out there. Sometimes you got to remember, like right now, Canada's hurting for goaltenders. Like the Olympics are around the corner. We're gonna have the Four Nations. It's slim pickings there. God, could you see a trade for Jarry back to Canada? Like, I think. Oh man, maybe not actually. The Flames have Wolf. The Oilers. They're looking to make it to the Stanley Cup playoffs again.
Yeah.
Not the Stanley Cup final again. I don't know if they're gonna.
Utah, maybe.
Utah, they've got some interesting pieces in net. They do.
I just don't know where in Canada. Like in Canada, like I don't see.
What if Demko's just never going to be the same? And Tristan's from Vancouver.
Yeah, that one just because of you just don't understand or you don't know the full story behind their injuries and whatnot. They're a team that's kind of just they're just painfully mid in a way, a different kind of mid than the Penguins are.
Far more frustrating for me.
Yeah, because of all that talent. But he's from Vancouver. Jim Rutherford's there. Yeah, I guess I could see them trying to swing something there. But yeah, it's not going to be an easy trade to make because there's probably no way you win the trade. The only win comes in getting that contract off the books.
God, Colorado might have been desperate enough like 2 months ago.
Yeah, they seem to have definitely.
They shored up their goaltending. God, Seattle. I got a text last night about Jarry saying that they would do Grubauer for Jarry 1-for-1. But
I mean, if they want to. I mean, Grubauer has been absolutely dreadful.
He has.
So I don't know if that's really anybody's winning there, but
it's literally a lateral move, and
yeah.
you are less attached to a Grubauer, so you don't feel as bad just sending him down to the minors.
I think the Penguins are just going to do anything to get out of that contract without taking on a massive contract in return, obviously. So they're just going to straight up sell for what they can just to get out of the contract.
Would it be the most Buffalo Sabres move for them to put their hand up on a guy like Jarry?
Who's that? The Sabres? Oh, gosh. The Sabres, it's honestly tough to say with the Sabres. I mean, it's, it's just a clown. Just a circus.
Yeah, that is a circus up there. I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to think of all 32 teams, and there's just there are very slim pickings for landing spots. And you're not even necessarily trying to win. You're trying to get out from Jarry's contract without having. Dubas has done this before, and I think he's learned valuable lessons. But he had to get rid of Patrick Marleau's contract, and he had to package a first rounder that turned into Seth Jarvis. I think he had to package a first rounder with another pick or another trade too, just to get rid of a contract. He's trying to do anything. He's not doing that. He'd rather probably eat the money than get rid of a first rounder at this point. But, it'll be super.
Minnesota will be looking for a goaltender in the offseason.
That is true. They will. They got a good room in Minnesota too. And Billy G, I've been waiting for him. When is Billy G going to start circling the Penguins? He doesn't seem to do much business with them. Even though he has such a close relationship with guys still on the team, there might be some listeners that don't even remember that Billy G won a Stanley Cup on Sidney Crosby's line. He was being kind of groomed to be the next GM, and he never really got his chance with GM Jimmy Rutherford at the helm. So I don't know. I wonder when he'll start circling the Penguins like a vulture, waiting to pluck some guys from that roster. But maybe start with Jarry and see how that goes in the offseason.
Yeah.
I'm prepared for Jarry to sit in the minors the rest of the year, and he'll be forgotten about. And then over the summer, one day we'll wake up and be like, oh, we got to do a pod. Jarry's been traded for Peter Mrazek to Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that was an interesting thing to wake up to this morning, Robbie. I'm sure there will be more to come, but until then, I don't have much more about this.
Yeah, so that will wrap up this episode. Last minute kind of throwing this together after the news today. But we will be back again Saturday, back on schedule, assuming nothing crazy happens between now and then. The Penguins play Friday in Buffalo and then Saturday in Washington. But Tristan Jarry has been waived by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Joel Blomqvist will be called up to replace him, and a new era begins in Pittsburgh with these moves. So for Snail, I'm Robbie. Again, stay safe, stay warm. We'll talk to you guys this weekend.